The Board, a mysterious extra-dimensional entity or group of entities that possess a unique and powerful role in the Federal Bureau of Control. Its only physical manifestation that we can perceive is that of a large, inverted black pyramid that looms over the astral plane, always observing with nebulous intent. This astral entity is the ruling body of the FVC, and in collaboration with the board-appointed director, forms the foundation of the Bureau as we know it. But this wasn't always the case. Upon the initial discovery of the oldest house by the FVC on August 4th, 1964, an expedition was led by then head of research Theodore Ashe Jr. to discover its secrets. Upon hearing of this discovery, then acting director Broderick Northmore took a train from Washington to take part in the expedition. During this period is where the Bureau changed forever. Northmore discovered the service weapon laying upon a pedestal in the foundation, placed before a strange obelisk simply referred to by the Bureau as the Nail, and thus communication with the board was established. Strangely, there was no pedestal prior to Northmore's arrival at the Nail, the first sign of the board's influence over the oldest house. This is the first time the board had made itself known to any member of the Bureau. Only a few hours afterwards, Northmore cornered Ashe to inform him about how the board had appointed him as director, even going as far to say that the title had been meaningless before their intervention. These events clearly show that the board acts judiciously and with conviction, exerting influence over the director either through telepathic messages or through the hotline.
A direct line to the astral plane and the board. And my hypothesis is, under the right conditions, to other planes of existence as well.
This is interesting because to this end, the board chooses to communicate with its chosen few, rather than outright exerting control itself like the Hiss. Why exactly is still a mystery. However, we can still infer the board's presence as a powerful being within the astral plane, simply because of its ability to retain control, especially since there are clearly other entities vying for the board's position, whether it be the Hiss or the former. Although the exact nature of these conflicts is still unknown to the FVC, it's somewhat clear at least that the board would rather work collaboratively with the FVC than against it, even if their true motives are beyond our comprehension. The board communicates with the director in a seemingly incomprehensible language. This is likely due to the fact that they do not perceive the natural world as we do. Our concept of self, time, and the like are limited by our very human perspective and are intrinsic to the way that we conceptualize and express what we see and experience in the world. For instance, we perceive time in a very linear fashion, past, present, and future. But what if we didn't? Since our language and understanding of the world are reliant on these perceptions, we can assume that if we had a broader or different perception of the world, our language and approach we take to conceptualizing and understanding it or ourselves would be totally different, as would our motivations for doing so. But it is impossible to put yourself in the shoes of a being whose existence is so fundamentally different, the board itself being in that position. This would explain why the way the board communicates is so strange, even to the director, who is capable of understanding the intent behind what's being said. For instance, if someone else were to answer the call of the hotline and speak to the board, in true Lovecraftian fashion, they would be driven to madness, as evident by a comms department intern who answered the call of the hotline but never recovered.
Ring, ring. It's Dr. Darling calling. In 1978, a comms department intern heard the hotline ring and picked it up, going against every safety protocol in the manual. She never recovered, and the handful of witnesses required extensive memory repression therapy.
But what of their intent? From what we can tell, they are the true leaders of the Bureau, taking a position above that of the director. As far as the main story of the game goes, the board seemed to be a mostly benevolent force, appointing Jessie as director and aiding her on her journey to defeat the Hiss, providing her with crucial insight and guiding her as well. But could this simply be out of necessity? In the Foundation, we see how turbulent Jessie's relationship with the board becomes, as she disobeys orders and even accepts an additional power from the former, that the board declined to give her.
It was nice of you to give me something the board wouldn't. What are you getting out of it?
They show their displeasure, and we see the board is capable of keeping secrets, which complicates things further, as it's implied that the former used to be a part of the board itself, adding further complexity to the dynamic of their relationship with no clear answer quite yet. This upsets the board, as both Trench and Northmore had an almost religious reverence for them. But things are different this time. Jessie has a will of her own, along with Polaris, so the idea of the board having its own intentions comes sharply into focus. This is my theory. The oldest house is a conduit or bridge between the astral plane and our world, symbolically represented by the tree Yggdrasil, seen and mentioned in the game, which also represents a bridge between the 9 worlds in Norse mythology. Both the astral plane and our world exert a certain level of influence on each other. Our collective unconscious influences the state of the astral plane, and the astral plane, our collective unconscious, but in indirect ways. Hence the game's focus on synchronicity, which for us results in altered world events or altered items. Both places have conscious beings that exist within their respective worlds and have their own intentions. The FBC and the board are similar in the fact that they are both seeking an understanding of the other plane of existence to further their own control within their respective realms, and thus have very similar goals, explaining their willingness to work collaboratively with us, as they have no direct influence themselves. Additionally, while the board might not have a role in every altered world event or altered item, as there are other entities as well, they do control what humanity does with these items through their bureaucratic power within the FBC, securing their own influence on our world and theirs through guiding those within the FBC to meet their own ends. This is most apparent with objects of power, as the board deliberately chooses who can mine with them, and thus controls who can and cannot enter the astral plane to do what the board cannot directly. It has and always will be about control. Symbolically, the inverted triangle is hinted at in the game as meaning the descent into the corporeal or human, which can mean many things. But for my theory, it symbolizes an unconscious state's desire, represented by the board, to communicate and influence the conscious state, represented by Jessie the director. In terms coined by psychiatrist Carl Jung, the board represents the shadow, an unconscious aspect of the personality which the conscious ego does not identify in itself. Thematically, this makes sense because the board exists within the realm of the unconscious, which is the astral plane. Jessie's disagreements with the board during the Foundation DLC are symbolic of what Jung often mentions as an encounter with the shadow. This encounter can either be of great benefit to the individual, should they seek to merge with it and incorporate it into their lives, or unbelievably destructive should they let it take control. The past directors Northmore and Trench failed during this encounter, and in the case of Northmore specifically, was quite literally consumed by it, as he is now the power source for the Bureau itself. But Jessie, as far as we can tell, has succeeded in that struggle, achieving individualization and distinguishing herself from the prior directors, regaining control. At the end of the DLC, we can see the perspective around the inverted triangle flip, symbolizing Jessie's ascent to power, or into the divine, and the merging of the conscious and unconscious worlds, bringing stability and peace, for now. But what do you guys think? I'd love to hear your thoughts and theories as well. If you have any ideas yourself, leave a comment so we can discuss them. And be sure to let me know if there's any particular topics within the world of Control you'd like to see me cover. I'm back to making these videos again and I'm very excited. So if you could, be sure to like, favorite, and subscribe. Maybe we can get a little lore community going. But that's it for me today. Take care and always remember to take control. This is Suspicious Squid, signing out.